I just saw a post. I hope it was recent, but you said you're stopping bodybuilding,
Competing in bodybuilding. I'm stopping for
competing.
some time competing in bodybuilding. Yeah. Yeah.
Why is that?
Bodybuilding it doesn't pay bills. It costs money. At the competitive sphere, like this just costs money to go to competitions and to do all the stuff. And so right now, the work environment is so good, the career situation is so good, and the opportunities are so good that if I continue to perseverate in bodybuilding competition at the level at which I'm interested in competing it, it would just detract so much from the work situation. And we have a really cool thing going at RP.
So that's the biggest reason. Would you say that like the next biggest reason would be the demands physically? So one being, your nutrition, and I imagine lack of good sleep. I've heard that guys who are cutting for bodybuilding struggle with sleep, but also the doses of anabolics that you'd have to take in prep.
The sleep's not a problem because if you take a sufficient amount of pharmaceutical grade growth hormone and you don't diet so extremely that you're starving to death all the time, you can still get really good sleep. I do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A lot of that is obviously really good sleep hygiene. That there's multiple components to that. But the higher doses of anabolics are annoying for
Right.
a few reasons. And that is definitely part of what that equation, the cost side of bodybuilding competition, that to me doesn't make a huge trade off amount of sense currently. Yeah.
So you said annoying for certain reasons. What are those reasons? Like the fact that you have to pin all the time, or what?
I'm not off of steroids. I'm on some dosage year round, either a replacement or somewhat higher. But so pinning's not an issue. Um, Having to bring your pinning stuff when you travel, having to arrange for steroids to exist in other countries when you travel abroad is definitely annoying and something that when you're in a pre-competitive phase, competitive phase, you should be doing. If you are not involved actively in competitions and it's just kind of doing it for the look and for the love and for the progress, yeah, like going on an international trip and bringing absolutely nothing with you is totally fine. The main thing for me are the side effects, mostly the psychological ones, specifically reduction in fluid intelligence and a increase in two other qualities that come to mind. One is anxiety, and the other one is aggression. And none of those things are cool
What does that look like? Like, how does that manifest?
in a few ways. One is it's difficult to hold a complex idea in your head all at once. You can see parts of it, but not the whole thing. Another one is you tend to lose your train of thought a little bit more, not because you have an attention span problem. You're actually quite focused, but because a lot of times you get into some intrusive thoughts and those prevent much cognitive stuff from happening and you end up thinking about other things that are not productive use of your time. Another one is similar to the holding things in your head at the same time is your ability to have a good short-term memory enough to say, for example, if I tell you, okay, so there's three things going on in my life right now. And by the time I get done talking about thing one, I know thing two, but I forgot what thing three was. Or I know that I was talking about thing one and that was a great conversation, but now I'm like, so, okay, like, what was I saying? And you're like, thing two and thing three. And I'm like, oh, that's right. And I maybe still remember thing two, but thing three, I just straight up don't remember. There's also a pretty decent impairment in creativity generally when I'm like showering or masturbating or showering or masturbating. I'm really describing my morning routine, which is 18 hours long. I have some ideas, you know?
Yeah, but you're one of those guys that can fit 18 hours in 3 hours. Have you seen those guys?
Oh yeah, CEO mentality, man.
Yeah. So yeah,
You're
okay.
either a trillionaire or I do not want to know your first or last name. That's my approach to life. So trillionaire mindset. I want to be the person that coined trillionaire mindset. Billionaire is cool, man, but it's really gets old.
Yeah.
Um, so when I'm thinking, I have various ideas about things, falling asleep, so on and so forth. And ideas, creativity is pretty well misunderstood by a lot of people. Creativity is not something that typically tends to occur actively, in my experience. it's like a self-prompting GPT or Claude 3.5. It just bubbles up ideas in your head. You don't come up with these ideas, they just bubble up. It's your next thought and your next thought and your next thought. And you have some control over them, but a lot of it's just totally subconscious and it just comes out of the ether. And so the bubble thoughts, they don't come in nearly as much with good ideas.
Whoa.
They come in either less, so you're honestly just not thinking as much, or they come in with, very often, they're running more on the script of how it would feel to be 10 to 20 times more male than you currently are. Because if you take 10 to 20 times the serum androgen concentration you're supposed to have and exist like that, then you're going to have a lot of thoughts that are extremely hypermasculine. And one of those is dominance hierarchy thinking. For example, oh, that one Instagram comment, like, that guy has no idea how much better I am at everything that I've ever done than the thing he does best in this world. Fuck that guy. What a cunt that guy. And you just perseverate on like some guy you don't even know his real name.
Yeah, you want to kill him. Like, let's be real, Mike. That's where this was headed.
So that's the dominance hierarchy part. You don't necessarily want to kill, but also there's the aggression part. So not only do you have the dominance hierarchy situation, you also have some aggression associated with it, maybe a lot. And then you feel wronged by things that people tell you. You have this exaggerated sense of self-righteousness, kind of like how dare they attitude, like it's me, I'm the man, fuck everybody else. And those are the thoughts that tend to bubble up. And like, you know, I'm not writing a lot of good video scripts off of shit like that. It's like, holy fucking shit. Like, I'll be brushing my teeth and fantasizing about how to beat up childhood bullies. And I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? And it's not like a conscious decision, but like I'm in it and it's happening to me. And I'm like, whoa, this is just not a really very productive or pleasant state of mind.
So could you put on your sleuth cap and maybe be able to specify what androgens that those are and at what doses, or at least some sort of ballpark? Because I imagine, I mean, obviously, if TRT is bringing your serum testosterone and your free testosterone, all of that up to normal or maybe slightly above normal, I imagine those intrusive thoughts, the aggression isn't there as much. At what point, like specifically, where do you feel it? Like, what drugs specifically do you think where that's happened?
It's all drugs. It just scales with dose, and some drugs do it more than others, but all drugs do it to some extent, or all steroids do, all anabolic steroids, all orals, all injectables. There are certain textural, qualitative, perceptive differences between them that that do manifest. For example, like with tren, you do have a sex drive, but it's a bit different than normal sex drive. It's more perverse. Like my personal, and I've heard this from lots of people, my personal proclivities towards fetishes skyrockets on tren.
Wow.
Yeah, whereas like a lot of testosterone will get you real horny, but it's more of a normal horny times 10 versus like a subversive horny. One dude, I can't personally relate to this, but I understand kind of the grand emotional push. This guy it was like a forum I read like decades ago where he's, dude,
I love it already.
Started my first tren cycle, and I just like started thinking like I must get my nipples pierced, and I got them pierced, and it was amazing, and I loved it, and I love that they're pierced, and I love them, and I was like, what the fuck? And I never had that sort of thing hit me. God bless everyone with pierced nipples, especially the ladies with pierced nipples. What's up, ladies? JK, I'm married, but what's up? But like, it's that, so there are some people will tell you like tren's just straight up more powerful, but it also has a bit more of other elements. For this last show that I did last week, most of the week I took halotestin, floxymesterone, and halo makes me interested in committing acts of violence, and not any kind of violence with my hands to other people, not random people, just some particular people, usually make-believe fantasy people in my head, and I just keep wanting to do it.
Wow. So
Yeah.
could you imagine something like that for jiu-jitsu or MMA?
I don't have to imagine it. I've done it. Yeah.
All
So
right.
I was when I was a white belt, I was peaking for a show with Halo, and I was rolling. Stupid idea, but I passed a dude's guard, and there's lots of jujitsu after you pass someone's guard. There's lots of things to do: side control, back takes, all this sort of thing. And my first instinctual desire was to rip his rib cage open. That's what I wanted to do. And it would have felt so good. That's what my brain told me. You want this. I don't know if you remember back in, I think 2003, there was one of the Hulk movies came out, like The Incredible Hulk, 2003. Eric Bana was in it.
Mm-hmm.
And Hulk fights these like hulked out dogs, like Hulk equivalent of dogs that his dad shot up with super Hulk serum or whatever the fuck. And one of the dogs, he literally claws in and rips its ribs completely open, tearing the dog. Like, that's Halo in a nutshell to me.
So Bruce Banner just took a bunch of Halo testing.
I mean,
That's all that happened.
That's not wrong. You do kind of feel like the Hulk, and there's all kinds of stuff in that movie actually that there's dialogue of how it feels to be the Hulk. He's like, I feel like exposed nerve. And that's not wrong. He's very highly irritable. Oh yeah. Everything's a problem. You also I tend to become more disagreeable, substantially more disagreeable on principle. Like if someone agrees with me about something, I'm like, no, I said it best. And it's like, I almost never verbalize these things, but it just gets really annoying to have these thoughts in your head.
Yeah, I imagine. I imagine that takes up a lot of space. Is you fighting this constant battle of intrusive thoughts, where that space could be GPT stuff. It could be bubbles coming up with ideas.
Bubbles of ideas.
Yeah, that just don't occur. Yeah, it's
still same ideas. Same ideas, but the ideas are like, man, it'd be cool to like fight a dog with just your hands and kill it. Like, what the fuck? Why is that in my head? And so there's definitely that whole situation occurs.
Fuck. That's gotta get tiring. It's just a fucking chore to be awake. Unless you're in war or like.
It's an interesting way you put that5 for many months of really hardcore steroid cycles, I would spend about 5 or 10 minutes lying in bed before getting up because I didn't want to get up. I didn't want to do anything. I was really scared of the upcoming day. The upcoming day was another opportunity to feel an insane burden on myself and another opportunity to risk failing at things, as opposed to being excited and happy that it's another day to do the thing. And then getting to bed was super nice because it was going to be quiet time for my mind. I didn't have to live with all these thoughts anymore for like 8 hours or whatever. So like the longer I could sleep, the better. It would be like super ideal to sleep all of prep completely away. That's definitely a thing. Yeah,
man, this is just so amazing to me because like I've been in the fitness industry for over a decade now. Started doing this stuff in 2013, and I'd heard a lot about on forums and Reddit about Trendic and like psycho guys that do crazy shit when they're on trend and stuff like that. But it's always been the level of nuance when people talk about it's never really existed. And it's nice to hear you speak of it. And seriously, it does feel refreshing to me. And I think it's important. I definitely think it's important because if bodybuilding requires you to do that to your brain, like that, it's one thing to, football on a certain level, the requirements that it has of your brain is to take on damage. Fighting, same thing, take on damage repeatedly. And that's like why it's no good, right? Because when your body breaks down, when you're older, your brain is the only thing remaining. And I don't think people talk about the tax on your brain and your cognitive abilities and just like having to do all of these cycles over and over again. I can imagine maybe PTSD might come from it and things like that of that nature. Like it really is like, is this sport? Is this way of living? Is it worthwhile in the first place?
Mm.
which is, it's just super interesting to me. I'm glad to hear you talk about it.
Yeah, well, so proper caveating here is like I might be an extreme case. Um, Maybe most people are not as sensitive to the psychological side effects. If I told my friend and colleague Jared Feather what I just said to you, that maybe I'm an extreme case and maybe other people don't think this way, he would roll his eyes and he would say, "You're just more introspective than most bodybuilders. They
Mm,
do feel this way. They just can't identify it. And they just end up slapping their girlfriends around or like throwing things across the fucking kitchen table."
right.
And that does happen all the time. Um, if I'm in every one of my states except for the very lowest of my low, if you catch me in the street, I'm going to be unreal, super kind and pleasant. I just have a really intense stare, but that's mostly just me being Russian and being related to the rest of my family. My sister has the same crazy stare that I do.
Yeah.
Other than that, you'll be like, oh, this guy's chill as fuck. But you meet lots of other folks, powerlifters, bodybuilders out in the real world when they're on peak cycle, and they'll tell you, like, they'll type into an Instagram comment, like, oh, dude, this fucking doesn't happen to me. But you meet them on cycle and they're huge dicks. And you're like, it absolutely happens to you. You just think that's how you should be. And here's the real fucked up part. A big part of having a lot of androgens, at least in my bloodstream, is it gives you the sense of righteousness. I should be like this. It's not because of the fact that they don't have the kind of peaches I want at Kroger. It's not because of the androgen level that I'm radically misperceiving the injustice that was caused to me. It's because these fucking assholes at Kroger can't ship the fucking right peaches to the store like they're supposed to. And your brain will get tricked over and over into assuming that all of the things you're thinking are the things you're supposed to be thinking.
Right.
So a lot of guys will be like, people just fucking piss me off, bro. And it's like, no, 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 no. You're out of your fucking mind. So one of the things I've told the few folks that I've been involved with who I've had the pleasure or displeasure of being there when they start their journey into anabolics is when you're on harder cycles, really anything, you have to understand that the thought bubbles you get that pop up for you, they're not an indicator reliably anymore of what the world really is. And so anytime you have an idea when you're on lots of gear about, well, this person wronged me or I should be doing this and that, just assume you're wrong first. And then after you've assumed that you're wrong, take some time, really think it through, try to get calm, and almost never act on it. So one thing that ends up happening with me is I will end up really quiet, like with my wife. And when I'm super, super quiet with my wife, it's uncharacteristic because she's talking to me and she is expecting me to talk back. I talk a lot. That's what I do. And she'll ask me a question and I'll just be real silent. And she knows, because we've talked about this a bunch, that all of my GPT thought bubbles coming up as responses are uncivilized and are not worthy of her hearing them. And so I'll sit there for 15, 30 seconds, a minute straight until I can materialize something civilized to come out of my mouth, up to and including, is it okay if we talk about this at a time when I can make a bit more sense of things? And she's almost always like, yeah, absolutely, dude. Because the drugs will make you feel like, oh, I got all sorts of shit to say about this, and all of it's toxic. Right. And so one thing that I consider something that's very important to me is if and when I'm on higher doses of drugs, I consider it my duty to never lose my civility, never threaten people physically, never get into physical altercations, never raise my voice. Other than with my parents, I have a perfect track record of civility. The parents thing's a bit different. Right. I'm not proud that I, on a few occasions, have yelled at my parents. Actually, none of them have been on a lot of gear, just teenagehood and emotions. But a lot of people just don't know that. And so when they're on gear, it's very easy for them to be like, yeah, like I'm going to share what I think about shit, and all the stuff that comes out is toxic, and everyone around them is like, dude, you're different. And they might not even tell you that because they're kind of scared how you're going to perceive it.